Let's just dive right in, shall we? Today, I am dropping you directly into this incredibly intimate, atmospheric basement kitchen. We're exploring Fond, a really brilliant novel by Max and Claude. I want you to imagine a space where the only sound is this low, patient murmur. It's literally the sound of something that has been talking to itself for over 6 decades. In this explainer, we're going to see exactly how a kitchen's past feeds its future. And, well, what happens when that future suddenly has an expiration date? So, 64. Think about that number for a second. That is the exact age, in years, of the massive copper-bottom mother stock pot that's just been simmering away in the back corner of this hotel kitchen. I mean, this thing has outlasted the hotel's plumbing, multiple changes of government, and 3 entirely different types of stoves. It is the absolute beating heart of the room, holding over half a century of deep culinary memory.
But you really have to contrast that staggering history with this next number, 5. That is the painfully meager number of days left until this 64-year-old hotel kitchen permanently closes its doors. The hotel's been sold. In 5 days, the water stops flowing. It really makes you wonder, what do you do when something that's been running constantly for 64 years is suddenly given just 5 days to live?
To really understand the stakes here, we've got to listen to the legendary chef H. Brandt. He's the guy who started it all, and he said, "You don't season for now, you season for later. Everything you put in tonight, somebody else tastes in 100 years." This perfectly introduces our overarching theme of culinary legacy. Every single action in this kitchen is an investment in a future the chef might never even get to see. But what happens to that legacy when the future just vanishes?
Let's get into Section 1, the 64-year stock.
Okay, picture this. It's Sunday morning, 4:45 a.m. For 3 decades, a veteran chef named Anton has walked down the service stairs in the pitch dark to tend to the mother stock. If you're not familiar, a mother stock is this continuous liquid base. It's perpetually drawn from to make the daily sauces, and then it's perpetually replenished with fresh roasted bones and water. It basically operates on this unbreakable ledger. What goes out must come back. And it's a ledger of flavor that is balanced flawlessly every single week for 64 years. Anton's morning ritual is just fascinating because it shows how repetition really anchors a chef's life. Like I said, he doesn't even turn on the overhead lights. He just checks this tiny blue pilot flame. He uses this specific deep ladle, one that's been worn totally smooth by 44 years of his own grip, to skim off the fat in these slow, deliberate arcs. And get this, he always tastes the stock off the back of the ladle. Why? Because the back tells you the truth while the front tells you what you want to hear. Then, he adjusts the burner dial to a specific worn-in notch. It's incredibly sensory, it's precise, and it is truly a daily act of devotion.
Which brings us to Section 2, the math of an ending.
So, that morning devotion hits an absolute brick wall when the hotel's director drops the bomb that the building has been sold. The kitchen is closing forever after next Saturday's Founders Gala. And here's how that final week maps out. The head chef, Reyes, makes this bold, honestly almost insane decision. For Saturday's final gala, he wants to cook the entire historical repertoire. We're talking every single dish that ever meant something to this kitchen, served to 200 returning guests. This kicks off a frantic countdown, forcing the staff to reach deep, deep into their past.
But here is where the math becomes truly devastating. On Monday morning, Anton realizes that to cook all that history, they're going to have to pull massively from the mother stock every single day. And, for the very first time in 64 years, he does not put new bones in the pot. The mother is no longer rebuilding. It's only giving. Every day the liquid level drops, leaving this dark ring on the copper pot. Just a whole ladder of rings, stepping down toward the absolute bottom.
Now, by Wednesday, they're running a trial for a classic consommé, which requires this brilliant, unforgiving piece of culinary science called a clarification raft. You start with cold stock, whisk in egg whites and minced lean meat, and then bring it to a painfully slow simmer. The proteins coagulate and float to the top, forming this raft that traps absolutely every impurity. Chef Reyes uses a wooden spoon to carefully open a small window in that raft, extracting a perfectly clear, pale gold liquid. It's wild. He is purifying 64 years of incredibly dense flavor into something so clear you could literally read a newspaper through it.
All right, let's jump into Section 3, tasting time on a plate.
That Wednesday afternoon, Anton is mentoring a 23-year-old chef named Mira, and he uses a classic dish from the archives called Saddle of Lamb 3 Ways. The contrast happening on this plate is just striking. On one side, you have this dense, intensely flavored braise that's been cooking low and slow for 6 hours. Right next to it, you've got the lamb loin, seared clean, fast, taking exactly 8 minutes from raw to rested. 2 entirely different speeds of cooking, totally designed to hit the diner's palate at the exact same moment.
Anton unpacks the philosophy behind this for Mira, and it's such an incredible insight. He says the clean, simple 8-minute loin basically acts as a frame. It only exists so the 6-hour braise has something to be compared to. The dish isn't even really about the lamb. It's about forcing the diner to physically taste the passage of time, to literally feel the difference between the quick, fleeting present and the slow, deep accumulation of hours. And we actually see this juxtaposition again on Thursday with Brandt's classic bordelaise sauce. Now, most chefs, they'd simply whisk butter or bone marrow into the sauce at the end for richness. But if you just whisk it in, it becomes a fact. The diner eats it without ever noticing the process. Brandt's recipe, however, demands slicing a piece of poached marrow and laying it gently on top of the sauce. So as the heat melts the marrow right there at the table, the diner watches the dish finish itself. They aren't just eating a meal anymore, they are witnessing a fleeting event happen right before their eyes.
Moving right along to Section 4, Naksh, the riverbed's memory. This brings us to this absolutely beautiful thematic concept introduced by Yusuf, who's been a dishwasher there for 10 years. After spraining his ankle, Yusuf leaves this really heartfelt letter for Anton. In it, he introduces a word from his native language, Naksh. It means the mark something leaves behind. It's not a stain or a scar, but a purposeful shape. It's the shape a heavy seal leaves when it's pressed into hot wax. Or, as Yusuf's grandmother beautifully described it, it's the shape a dried riverbed holds long after the water is gone.
Yusuf uses this concept to explain the highly temporary nature of kitchen staff. He writes, "The water is never the same water twice, but the bed remembers every flood. You are the bed, Anton." He's basically telling Anton that the staff, all the chefs, the waiters, the dishwashers, they're just the water flowing through. But Anton and that ancient stockpot, they're the riverbed. They hold the permanent, lasting shape of the kitchen. When the hotel closes on Saturday, sure, the water stops, but the riverbed is still going to remember.
And this kitchen literally hoards its physical memories. To prove that nothing ever truly disappears, it just goes quiet for a little while. The dry store is absolutely packed with these artifacts. There's a 100-year-old reservation ledger, where a guest is optimistically marked as returning. There are Brandt's secret recipes hidden away in a dented biscuit tin, including this totally unwritten soup made just for the mysterious Thursday people. And my favorite, an empty, uniquely shaped wine bottle kept by the Halversons since their wedding 50 years ago, which they sent back to the kitchen to just sit with everything else on the final night.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Fond, What is Left?
It's Friday, the emotional climax of the entire week. The physical stock has reached its absolute bottom. The liquid is incredibly low, concentrated, and pure, ready to be entirely consumed for Saturday's final gala. The pot is finally going to be empty. Which brings us right to the title of the novel itself, Fond. Earlier in the week, Anton points out this dark, stubborn ring of caramelized juices stuck to the bottom of a saucepan. He tells Mira to deglaze it with water so she doesn't lose it. That's fond, he says. And it's the exact same word used for the massive mother stockpot in French culinary terms. Different size, but the exact same idea. Fond is the essence of what is left behind, just waiting to become the foundation of the very next thing. Knowing that the physical pot will end, Liesl, the pastry chef, and the rest of the staff find these incredibly touching, inventive ways to carry the literal fond into the future. They pack up small catering jars of the final highly concentrated stock for the staff to take home as keepsakes. Liesl actually bakes the mother stock directly into the dough of individual brioches. She's structurally working 64 years of history into a brand new loaf of bread. They are doing whatever they can to preserve what is left. Ultimately, Anton finds a hidden note in Brandt's tin that just perfectly summarizes the whole shebang. It says, "The pot doesn't keep itself going because it's easy. It keeps going because every so often someone decides it's worth the trouble." So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that legacy isn't an accident. Legacy is just an accumulation of daily intentional effort. The pot wasn't the point. The daily decision to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work, that was the point all along.
Which leaves us with this final profound thought to carry with you. Fond shows us that whether it's 64 years of a simmering mother stock or just the daily habits we're building in our own lives, we're all creating a pattern. We are all leaving a mark. So I have to ask you, when your water stops flowing, what shape will your riverbed leave behind? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found the naksh and fond of this kitchen as fascinating as I did. Catch you next time.